Good morning, everyone. My name is Jillian, and we're back again. Some of you may have met us here before, but we're here at the Bimini Biological Field Station. I'm the founder of Sharks4Kids, and we're doing our monthly live Google Hangout here at the lab. The lab is located on the South Island of Bimini in the Bahamas. It's about 50 miles from the United States, and the lab's been here for 25 years doing some world-renowned shark research. And today I'm going to introduce you to our team, and we also have a special guest, and then we'll jump in and introduce the classrooms that are actually joining us on camera as well. You want to go ahead?
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Fab. I'm a volunteer here at the lab.
Hey guys, my name's Emily. I'm from Canada. I'm one of the assistant managers here at the Bimini Biological Field Station. So I get to help out with all the really cool research that's going on, as well as get to decide volunteers that get to come here and take care of some data and all that kind of fun stuff.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Anthony. I'm the outreach coordinator out here at the lab, and I'm in charge of all of our public opportunities. So that includes working with Jillian and being here for you guys to be able to talk to you a little bit about the work we do, but also our public tours and everything like that. So we're happy to have you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I hear we have a group from Texas. Way to go, guys. I'm from Brownsville, so it's good to see a Texas group up there.
Cool. All right, so we're going to go ahead and introduce our classrooms. So when we actually say your class, if you guys want to turn your mic on and then kind of give a wave and say hi to everyone. So do we have Mrs. Gruffcorn's class from Iowa? Are you guys with us? Maybe they weren't able to make it. All right, so do we have Mr. Russell's year 4s from Ireland? Hey, welcome. All right, and Miss Wineski's from Wisconsin, your grade 6 students. All right, great. Welcome, guys. And Miss Esquivel's grade 2 students from Texas. Say hi. All right, Anthony will be really excited because he's from Texas. All right, so like I said, we're on the South Island of Bimini in the Bahamas, and if you want to hang out with sharks, you want to study them, you want to swim with them, this is really a great place to be. The Bahamas is considered the shark diving capital of the world, and it's also home to a shark sanctuary. It's illegal to catch and kill sharks here. They're protected, and there's some phenomenal research happening. We're going to talk a little bit about the specific shark we actually have here with us, and then go through some of the anatomy, kind of what makes this little shark unique. Some of the other sharks that are found here in the area, some of the tags and the work being done and why certain tags are used, and we'll also explain what a tag actually is and the process, and we'll take you through an actual workup. So what does it mean? What do scientists do when they actually catch a shark? Okay, why do they collect specific data? Why is that important, and how is it helping to save these animals? So the animal that we have to introduce you to today is our friend the nurse shark. So I'm just going to bring it over here just a second. We'll move the computer a little closer in just a minute, but this is our friend that's helping us today. All right, so this is a nurse shark, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the anatomy and some of the features of this shark in just a minute, but this is who you're actually going to get to learn about today. And this shark is from the Bimini Biological Field Station's semi-captive pen. So if you guys have been out and you've seen cows or sheep or pigs in a field with a fence, kind of like that, but it has sharks. It has juvenile nurse sharks and lemon sharks and southern stingrays. They're kept for a short amount of time to offer educational opportunities for the public, people who come visit for tours, and also for volunteers and people working here to learn to safely handle these animals. They're kept for a minimal amount of time and release. So this little shark is just joining us in the lab in this special folding tank. We'll go back out to the pen and then shortly be released back out into the wild after helping us be able to teach people just like you about these animals. All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the anatomy. So we're going to move the computer a little bit closer. Let's see. This is the splash guard. All right.
Okay, so hi guys, I'm just going to point out a few things on our sharks that are really cool. So the first thing I want to say is the fact that our sharks actually don't have bones. They are cartilaginous animals, so they only have a cartilaginous skeleton. So kind of similar to what you have in your ears, their whole body is made out of this stuff. It makes them really, really flexible and really, really agile. So our shark here does have a few cool things. So they do indeed have the same senses that we have. They have their eyes. You can just see them here on the front of their head. Yeah. They also have a nose. They have, oh, that's what we have it. They have the little nostrils here at the front of the mouth. And they also have ears. They can hear the surroundings. And that consists of two little dots on the top of their head. So they can hear low frequency sounds like splashes in the water.
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that. They'll be able to hear the splashes. These little sharks also have tongues as well, so they're able to taste their food. Some species can be quite picky, and they like to taste that. So I don't know if you can see, but in the back of the mouth, there's a little tongue back there. They do a lot of exploratory feeding, so instead of feeling their surroundings like we do with our hands, they can use their mouths to learn about their environment by tasting it. And then sharks also have their gills. So the little nurse shark here has what looks like 4 gills. You can see the little gill slit openings here. They're moving. That means they're just trying to push water through the gills. However, sharks do normally have 5 to 7 gills. So our nurse shark here does have a hidden gill, and it's just at the back of the last one, if I can get it. There it is. If there's a tiny little hidden gill underneath this last one. So they actually do have 5 gills. Our sharks as well have another sense that we don't have, which makes them extremely cool animals. It's called the ampullae of Lorenzini. So these consist of little black dots just around the mouth area. Don't want to get too close. Little black dots up there. And these are electromagnetic receptors. So they can feel electrical impulses in the water. Things that they can detect using this would be heartbeat of their prey items. So the heart will never stop, hopefully if it's alive, and that pumping of the heart, they can detect that, so it makes them extremely good predators. And these, on the nurse shark here, have these little extensions, makes it like a catfish. Those are barbels, and that's an extension of the ampullae of Lorenzini, so these guys are especially good at it. Yep. Okay, another really cool adaptation of our sharks is their skin that we have. So they actually have what we call dermal denticles, which means skin teeth. So they have almost little teeth on top of each other, all going down towards the tail. Makes them extremely, extremely rough when you go up towards the head, but extremely hydrodynamic when you go towards the tail. Also, lots of wetsuits and swim costumes, things like that for Olympic swimmers that have been adapted to follow the scales of sharks just because it's so hydrodynamic. Yeah. And then our nurse shark here is quite unusual fins compared to most sharks. So we have the dorsal fins here on the back. These are pushed really far back along the body compared to most other species. This is because they get into really tight spaces, and this allows them to. They also have their pelvic fins, which are these ones at the side at the front, pectoral fins at the front, pelvic here at the back. We have an anal fin just here. So this would be the first dorsal, the second dorsal. And then we have this long tail, which is called the caudal fin. Okay. Anything else we want to say about the next?
See if it's a boy or a girl.
Oh yeah. So we're just going to see if it's a boy or a girl, guys. So we know that by this looking between the pelvic fins. This little shark has what we call claspers, these little projections here, and that means it's a boy. The absence of those would mean it's a female. It means it's a little girl.
Okay. So what we're going to do now, guys, I can hop in here. Anthony, if you want to grab the tags, I'll just do a quick intro. So what we're going to now is we're going to talk about some of the tags. So you may have heard, you may have seen things on television shows that you talk about tags, tagging sharks. So what this does is it essentially gives the shark kind of a name tag or an ID tag. And so there's different types that can be used. And when we actually do the workup on the shark, the data collection, we're going to use some specific tags. But we want to talk to you a little bit about the different kinds of tags that might be used depending on the type of animal and also depending on the questions that are being asked, what you want to learn about that particular shark or species of sharks. So Anthony's going to take you through some of the tags that the Sharklab here in Bimini actually uses.
Awesome, guys. Well, as Jillian said, these tags really let us identify who the sharks are, but also gives us some really great information depending on the type of tag. Now the first one that we use a lot of is one we call our pit tag, and it's the same type of tag that might be in your cat or dog if it's microchipped. So it's just this tiny, tiny little tag, you guys can see that, that we'll just put right under the skin. And of course, when we catch these sharks, what we'll do, and we'll actually scan the shark over. Yeah, so I'll show you, I'll demonstrate for you guys on this little guy.
Let's see if I can bring it.
Well, first I have to turn it on, make sure it's on. There we go. And that really high-pitched beep showed me the number, and it's right there. So we know exactly who it is. When we first caught the shark, we'll know that date. We'll know maybe how old it is, depending on when we caught it. So we'll use those on our small sharks, like our juveniles here, all the way up to our big adult female tiger sharks and great hammerheads. So it really, really helps us just identify them. It doesn't give us any other information. The second type of tag that we'll use to just identify them is this tag right here, and this is called a dart tag or KC tag. And you guys will notice it's got a little dart here at the end that we'll actually put under the skin. And then it's got some monofilament, which is this string right here, attached to a vial. And on the vial is actually a number you guys can see. So you can see the number 4 right there. It actually says 417. And what this does is help us identify them again. But what's different between this and our pit tag is this hangs outside the skin. So when we see the shark, we can hopefully just look at the KC tag and know exactly who it is. What we've been doing now, because sometimes if we're swimming with sharks and not trying to catch them, we're starting to put little colored bead combinations on here to help us identify them anymore. So that goes just right in this area. And that's, of course, if we're just swimming right alongside them and not trying to catch them. It helps us figure out exactly who it is. Now, again, that doesn't record any sort of location or any other type of information. So it just tells us who it is. And we have to, of course, catch them. Now, the next tag is probably my favorite tag because it's a part of our project that's really helping us track these guys and understand where they're going and what type of habitats they like. So that's this tag right here. This is our acoustic tag. It's just got our radio contact information and other things on it. And what it does is it'll send out an acoustic signal that's then picked up by any receiver that it's closest to. So here around Bimini, we have about 50 different receivers that these guys can pick up on. And of course, we know exactly where those receivers are. We know what type of habitat they're in, what type of depth they're at. So we get all this really cool information about where the shark is spending its time. And then on top of that, you add in other projects where we're looking at the different type of maybe bait fish that are in that area, so we can start to understand where sharks are preferring to spend their time to maybe look for food or maybe find shelter. So this will tell us really where they're spending time. And of course, when we catch them, we'll implant the transmitter, let them go, and we don't really ever need to catch the shark again because we'll just go to our receivers and download all the information because they're put right into that receiver. So that's a really, really very cool project. We also use satellite tags occasionally. We don't use those as frequently because they're pretty expensive. But when we do apply them, and we've applied at least 3 of them right now on our great hammerheads, and we've seen that one great hammerhead actually made its way all the way up to Virginia, and then its tag popped off, and that was only after about 10 days. So we really use some very, very cool tags to identify these guys and figure out some information.
If you guys can see this is what the receiver looks like on the bottom. So that's the thing that can actually pick up the signals coming off the tag. And you can see this hammerhead has the tag right. Let me see if I can get my finger there. Oops. Hang on. Wrong way. All right. So the tag is obviously on the hammerhead right there. And that receiver will pick it up as it swims by. Sometimes they're on buoys. Sometimes they're on the bottom. Different placement in different areas. But that way you can see what equipment is actually being used to pick up the tag information.
Yeah, guys, so as you guys can tell, we have a lot of different tools and tags at our disposal to really understand where sharks are spending their time. Even some of our tags tells us how they're swimming, whether they're sitting still, are they swimming slowly, or are they taking after some prey to try and eat. So it's very cool to use these different types of tags to just learn as much as we can. And of course, after about 25 years of being here at the Sharklab and all the work we've done, we've found some amazing, amazing discoveries with sharks.
All right, so now we're actually going to take you through what's called a workup. So all over the world, when scientists and researchers go out and they catch sharks, they use nets, they use drum lines, long lines, and once they have a shark, even on fishing poles as well, just once the shark is caught, there's specific data or information that scientists want to know. All right, this is important information to understand how fast and go along with the tags. It's basic information, and the workup is very when you go to the right? So certain things like your weight and your height that a doctor wants to find out, right? We do the exact same things with sharks. So here, Ben and Emily are actually going to take you through, so say the lab's gone out, they've caught this little nurse shark, right? Now this is the next step of the information that's actually collected from this specific shark. And this is done whether it's a bull shark, great whites, hammerheads, all over the world when scientists are catching these animals. It's really, really important to get this specific data.
Okay, hey guys. So, you can grab it. So when we first catch a shark, what we like to do to start off the process is measure the shark. So in this little trough that we have here across our tub, just one sec, I'm just gonna put you guys down.
I'm gonna lift it. I'm gonna lift it up. Yeah. We're just getting a better screen angle. There we go. Let's see if
okay, so this is the trough here that we use for our juvenile sharks. So I'm just going to place the nurse shark into the trough here.
And inside this trough, we actually have a measuring tape to make it easier for us to be able to measure the size of the shark. So there's 3 different measurements that we like to do when we take measurements for a shark to estimate or to measure their length. And they're called the pre-caudal length, the fork length, and the total length. However, nurse sharks are a little bit different. As Fen showed you, this is the caudal fin of a shark. And nurse sharks are a little bit different from other sharks because they don't have a fork in their caudal fin like a lot of other sharks do. So we actually only take the pre-caudal length and the total length from nurse sharks. So this little shark has a pre-caudal length of 37 centimeters, which is pretty tiny, and a total length of 51.5 centimeters. So it's a pretty tiny shark, but not the smallest we've seen here at the lab. Also, we like to take girth measurements of our juvenile sharks, as well as our large female tiger sharks, interestingly enough. So what we do to do that is we take the measuring tape and we put it around the shark, and we put it right into its armpits. And then we measure around the girth of the shark. So it's like measuring our waistband. This little shark is 16.5 centimeters around, so it's pretty tiny, but still has a lot of time to grow. Another thing we like to do when we catch a shark is take a clip for DNA and isotope. So these go towards finding, the DNA goes towards being able to make a family tree, more or less, of all the little juvenile and adult nurse sharks that we find here in Bimini. And we do this with our lemons, our tigers, our hammerheads, all of our different species. So in order to do that, you take a little clip with these little scissors, and you just clip off a little bit of their fin. They will flinch a little bit. There we go. All right. And there it is. Just this little tiny, tiny piece is all we need. And then we send it away, and people can make, like I said, family trees of our little nurse sharks.
Do you have the little vial?
Yeah.
Just show me those in.
And then we keep them in these little tiny vials in order to preserve them before we send them away. Just put it in there. We also take isotope samples, but there's already been an isotope sample taken from the shark. You can see there's a little triangle cut from the first dorsal fin. And you do it the exact same way with a little pair of scissors, and you cut out a little bit of a triangle. And these isotope samples help us determine what kind of prey items these sharks are eating and where they like to spend their time through carbon and nitrogen samples. Okay. What am I missing? Oh, you guys already pig tag scanned it.
Yeah. Yep.
During these workups, we also scan the shark to see if we've already caught the shark before. And Jillian and Anthony showed you guys that this guy is actually already tagged with a little pit tag. So we don't like to double tag them, so we don't need to put another tag in this guy. And we also like to weigh them.
Do you have the scale? Okay, there's the bag. I brought the lid. Where's the scale? Oh,
Okay, so we have a little handmade sling that we've got that we use to weigh our sharks. So it has a scale at the top, you'll see it in just a moment, with the sling at the bottom that we place the baby now shark into. So this is it here, and when they're ready,
Oh, there we go.
there we go, okay? You ready? Yep. Okay, so the nurse shark is placed into the trough, and then we let go.
And then we'll try to read the scale and see what it says. And right now, it's right at about 2 kilograms.
Okay.
All right, once the workup's completed and the person who is recording all the data confirms that we've gotten everything we needed, the shark is then released back into the wild. If we grab this guy from a ledge, we'll put him right back under the ledge where we found him. And then it's like he was never touched, except for the little tag that he keeps. So, yeah,
all right.
easy as that.
Slide this in. Oh, I'm gonna leave that there, or two-hand it. Yes, we don't.
Yeah, to
Flash jacks.
Yeah, tip it your way.
Alright, so let's see. Oh, I can fit. Do you want to squish in? Alright, so the workup is actually really easy when it's done inside the lab, but you have to remember that when you're outside, it may be rough seas, it may be raining, it may be really windy, and you've got the animal next to the boat, so it can be really, really challenging. And all of this is done very quickly. The team practices and makes sure they can do it really efficiently, really quickly, to reduce the amount of stress on the animal. You want to release them as quickly as possible, and so all of this is done in a very specific manner to be able to do that and have it done quickly and efficiently. And the information that comes from that tells us where the sharks go, what do they eat, okay, the habitats that they use. All of this becomes part of conserving sharks. If we want to protect them, we have to know these things about them. We have to understand these animals, where they go, the food they're eating, the habitats they use. Here in Bimini, some of the mangroves, the amount of them has been reduced. We've seen an impact on the sharks because it's a very, very critical habitat for these little sharks and juvenile lemon sharks when they're first born. It's kind of like a nursery school for them. It's a safe place for them to hide out and find food. So it's also important to understand the habitats that they're using throughout their lifetime because it often changes. And all of this information comes from data that's collected from these animals. It's why the science is so important and why the shark tagging is really an important part in better understanding sharks, which leads to better protections within specific states or the shark sanctuary that exists here in the Bahamas. All right, so we're going to rotate through the classes. So when we go to each of your classes, if you want to unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask we'll do 2 questions to start, and then we'll rotate to the next. Actually, can you grab that? That's okay. We'll start with Mr. Russell's class because I know he has to go pretty quickly.
Don't forget to look at the camera.
How long can sharks breathe for out of water?
How long what?
How long can sharks breathe when they're out of water?
Well, can they breathe underwater? Out of water. Well, honestly, sharks are designed to breathe underwater. They never have to go to the surface to get air. Whether they're ones that have to ram ventilate, they have to move forward to get the water to come in through their mouth, or buccal pump. Like this shark right now is sitting on the bottom just pumping its gills. It's sucking water in through its mouth, allowing it to breathe. So they're designed to be in the water. Now, we were lifting the shark in and out. We're doing it very briefly. So the shark could actually be okay for quite a long time, but you wouldn't want to do that. You want to do it as quickly as possible. You don't want to keep them out of their natural environment. But for moving it and doing the work that we were showing you guys, you can do that very quickly. The shark can use the oxygen stores it has, but you don't want to keep them out very long. Great question. You guys want to do? We'll do 2 more from your class because I know you guys have to go.
Do sharks sleep?
Do sharks sleep? Anthony, want to do that?
What was the question one more time?
Do sharks sleep?
Great question. So one of the things when it comes to marine life sleeping is we don't know, because it's hard for us to study them because the same way certain animals on land sleep during the day and others sleep during the night. But of course, being underwater, it's really hard to tell with these guys. But what some scientists have done and what they've actually seen in dolphins is dolphins will shut off half of their brain. And then so that part of their brain and the rest of that side of the body that brain controls actually gets a little bit of rest, but the other part of the brain is still working. So it's still the dolphin's still able to swim slowly and not go follow whatever path it's following. And then once that side of the brain's got enough rest, the other one will switch off, and the one that was first asleep will turn back on. So they'll do that for a while, and then of course they'll get plenty of rest, and then turn both halves of their brains on and work fine. And it seemed everybody believed that sharks do the same thing, where they shut off half their brain and let that half of the body and brain rest, and then switch. Good question.
And we'll do 1 more for Mr. Russell's class.
Why do nurse sharks like to stay so low in the water?
Why do the nurse sharks like to sleep?
Well, there's a couple reasons. A lot of the food that they eat, this nurse shark, small snails called conch, little ones, lobsters, small fish, and a lot of the prey items that they eat are down on the bottom. They're under reef ledges. They're tucked in. They're hiding out. And they're also designed to be on the bottom. If you saw the fact that they don't have, here, we can look real quick. So you saw the fact that this little shark doesn't have a lower part of his tail, okay? That is a big advantage for being a benthic shark, one that spends time on the bottom. Now, if it had a huge fork sticking out, that would get in the way. So this shark is really designed to be on the bottom. Their eyes are small as well, so they don't get scraped up when they're going under ledges, and that thick skin also protects them. So they're really, really designed to be able to be the perfect predator for animals that are on the bottom and in under crevices. Great question. All right, so we're going to go to Mrs. Wisniewski's class. You guys have a couple of questions.
Yes, we do.
How many different types of species do you have at your lab currently?
I need this one. Currently in our pens that Julian had mentioned, we have 3 different species. So we have the nurse shark, the lemon shark, and the southern stingray. However, our lab works with many different species, from tiger sharks to great hammerheads, black tips, bull sharks, reef sharks. There's multiple. I know one of our projects right now, Mo is one of our PIs, and he's working with 13 different species around Bimini and putting acoustic tags that Anthony has actually mentioned in order to track their movements and see what their habitat preferences are. But there's many species around Bimini, and we actually don't even work with all of them. So currently at our lab we have 3, but we work with a lot.
Great question. And we'll do another one.
How can you tell the age of a shark?
Say that again?
How can you tell the age of a shark?
Great question.
I can do growth. Well, with some species, so the data that we were collecting, so as we measure a nurse shark, we know they're approximately 28 centimeters or about 11 inches when they're born. And they grow about 4 to 5 inches per year. So knowing inches, like growth rates like that through having caught sharks and seeing, okay, we caught this shark last year, it's grown this amount, or we've caught this species, and again, by comparing that, we can actually determine, it's an estimate, the actual age based on the size at birth and knowing the growth rate per year. Now this does vary after certain amounts of years. It's not quite as easy as that. You can also look at the growth rings. If you guys have ever cut a tree and seen the rings inside of it, the annuli, Sharks will actually have that, but unfortunately that process involves not keeping the shark alive. You'd actually have to stain, you'd have to inject a dye, and then you'd have to have the dead shark to determine. So that's usually avoided now. Most of the studying being done is what we call non-invasive and non-lethal. It means we're trying to minimize the stress on the animal and not have to kill the animal. 40 years ago, shark science involved killing a lot of the sharks to understand them, and it's moved away from that, whether it's doing video analysis, observing them. The lab's been flying drones to do observations of different sharks, using lasers to measure them, all these different techniques that mean less stress and also keeping the animal alive. Great question. We can do one more from your class and then we'll keep going.
Do sharks blink? If not, why?
Well, can you say that one again?
Okay, do sharks blink? If not, why?
Great question. So, sharks kind of blink, okay, but it's not the same reason that that us human beings would blink, okay. Now, what they are able to do is really just protect their eyes, and they can do that one of two ways. One is they'll blink essentially, and they'll close something called a nictitating membrane. But all that is for is to cover their eye over when they're attacking their prey. So things like our nurse sharks will do something a little different. They'll actually just roll their eye in the back of their head. Okay? So the white part of our eyes, or the sclera, is very, very tough and very strong. So things like our nurse sharks, as well as our great white sharks, will actually roll their eyes in the back of their head. Now what Jillian's going to show you guys quickly is a picture of a nictitating membrane. So you guys can kind of see it looks a little bit like an eyelid. And of course, these guys will cover them over if they're eating fish as well, and fish have spines in their fins. So they kind of blink, but it's not for the same reason. Where we'll blink for a protection of our eyes, but also to moisturize and keep them nice and wet. Of course, sharks don't need that because they're in the water all the time. Great question.
All right, let's move to Miss Esquivel's class.
Have you ever seen an albino shark?
I've not personally seen one. I've seen lighter color variations. Even some of the nurse sharks here will be slightly lighter color. I've seen videos and photos of them. I have never personally seen one. I think they're pretty rare. Would be awesome to see, but I've never actually seen one in person. So shows you how rare they are. We spend a lot of time with sharks, and none of us have ever seen one, so they're actually pretty rare. But that would be amazing to see. Question? Do you guys have another question?
Do some sharks lay eggs?
Good question.
Yeah, I can do that. Yes, a lot of shark species do lay eggs, but sharks are actually really cool and unusual in the sense that they actually have 3 different ways that they can give birth to their young. So a lot of species do lay eggs, like you would imagine most fish would. Some sharks also have live birth. So our lemon sharks here do have live birth. They do have something similar to a placenta like humans do, and they will give birth to them completely live. And then there's a third way where sharks lay eggs into their uterus, and then they will hatch from the eggs still inside the mother, and then they'll be given birth to live. So there's 3 different mechanisms, and for an animal that's extremely rare that there's so much variation between the species. So that's another thing that's extremely interesting to study between the species, so we know which ones have which mechanisms, so we can learn more about them.
I'm just going to show you guys, this is a video of a little embryo inside the egg case, if I can turn it, that a window's been cut. So this is a little baby shark actually in the egg case. All right, so you can actually see it. It's got a yolk sac it can feed on. It's able to move the water and to breathe. All right, so that's what that looks like. Whereas this little nurse shark hatched out of an egg case inside mom, she shed those egg cases, and then several weeks later it was actually born alive. Great question. We'll do one more, and then we'll go back to Miss Wineski's class.
What do sharks eat?
Well, it really depends on the type of shark. So, like this little nurse shark, small crabs, lobster, little fish, great hammerheads like stingrays, something like a great white like seals and sea lions. So they really have quite a diverse, quite a different kind of menu that are options for them. And it really depends on the type of shark. Just like you have a favorite food and your friend might have a favorite one, not every shark eats everything. Sometimes people say they're just mindless eating machines and all they do is swim around and eat. That's not the case. They're actually pretty particular, and different species will feed on different items. Question. All right, we'll go back to Mrs. Wineski's.
What is the most common injury on a shark?
Was that most common injury?
Yes.
On a shark?
Yeah.
Probably fishing gear. I mean, a lot of the sharks that you see here, even the hammerheads, even though sharks are protected here, when you go out fishing, you don't always know what you're going to catch. So a lot of the sharks that you'll see here have either a hook, line, or if the hook is pulled, they may have damage on the jaw line, where you've seen that wrapped around. That's probably one of the most common things, but sharks heal incredibly quickly. It's actually really amazing if they have a cut or anything, or even if the lab does surgery, one stitch and it heals incredibly fast. But I'd say that's probably the most common, or bite marks.
Entanglements.
Yeah, entanglements and lines, bites. They do. Sharks eat other sharks. They also bite each other when mating happens. The male will bite onto the female and actually hold her in place. So you'll see females with cuts and things like that. So those are also quite common, but not as severe as something that might happen from human interaction, whether it be fishing gear or plastics or things like that. Great question. Have another one?
Are all sharks carnivores?
Ooh, that's a very good question. And the answer is actually no. So not all sharks eat things like fish or other sharks or even crustaceans. Some sharks actually eat things called plankton. So they're filter feeders, like you can imagine a baleen whale, like a big humpback whale, filters in all its food, and it's just little microscopic plankton. So things like basking sharks and whale sharks, which are like the whale shark is the biggest shark in the world, and basking sharks are very large too. They're the two biggest. Oh, they're the two biggest then. They're actually the two of the sharks that are not carnivores at all. Yeah, so not all sharks are carnivores. That's a very good question.
Let's have one more.
Do sharks swim any other different ways besides swimming up front? Birds?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, the audio's not great. If you don't mind speaking up, sorry.
Do sharks swim any other different ways? Like, can they swim backwards?
That's right.
They only swim
Yeah. Did you say sharks swim backwards?
Can they only swim in one direction in one way, or can they also swim in other ways?
Well, they can. The forward movement, particularly for sharks like the hammerhead, the great hammerhead and the white shark, they have to move forward in order to breathe. So if you guys can see, we'll show you right now because this is kind of cool. So you'll see the nurse shark resting on the bottom. Let's see. You'll have to tell me if you can actually see it. So this nurse shark is laying on the bottom. Yeah?
Yep.
All right, so it's laying on the bottom, and its gills are pumping. It's breathing. So it's not having to do that forward movement like you see with great whites or makos or the great hammerheads. So those sharks, the forward movement is really important for being able to breathe. Now, nurse sharks, you'll oftentimes see them kind of arch up on their fins and walk backwards. Kind of walk and move backwards. So it's possible for them to kind of move, but you're not going to see a shark just like cruising backwards, throwing it into reverse and going like you can in a car. Really just because the importance of moving forward for many species is the ability to be able to breathe. Great question. All right, I'll go back and do a few more from Miss Esquivel's class.
If a hammerhead ate a stingray, how come they don't get stinged if they ate it?
That's a very good question. So one of the very cool things about sharks is as they've developed over the many ages, the things they eat, their body will find a way, if they are dangerous to, say, other animals, these guys have eaten them for so long, so their bodies will adapt to being able to protect against them. So things like stingray barbs don't bother the sharks the way it would us if we got poked by one. Or even certain sharks might sometimes eat lionfish, which lionfish are known to really hurt some people. Doesn't bother the sharks at all. So they've just developed over time to their bodies to eating things that normally would hurt anything else.
Good question. You guys have another question?
What do sharks do all day?
Say that again?
What do sharks do all day?
Do you think they're playing basketball or video games?
Yeah.
No, they're not really doing those things, but they're swimming. Okay, the ones that have to swim, no matter what they're doing, they have to keep swimming in order to breathe. They're finding food, they're hunting. Little nurse sharks you'll oftentimes see in the mangroves piled up with other nurse sharks, and one of the studies that was done here at the lab has determined that the baby lemon sharks actually have their best friends just like you do. So they have their buddies they like to hang out with. But they're not playing basketball or playing video games. They're finding food, finding shelter, and working together, and they do different activities with their friends. So it really just depends on the type of shark, but it really involves a lot of swimming and hunting for food, and then periods like Anthony was talking about sleeping, maybe swimming slower or having periods of rest. Cool. And we'll do one more, and then we can go back to Mrs. Wineski's.
What are the enemies of a great white shark?
What was that? What are the predators of a great white shark?
Actually, kind of recently, they found that killer whales are pretty big predators of great white sharks. So great white sharks were seen for such a long time as being these scary predators that were just kind of the monsters of the ocean, which is not the case at all. And they even have predators themselves. So killer whales, which are known to eat other whales, other marine mammals. Some of them are known to eat fish, but then there's also some that have been known to eat sharks, and great white sharks seem to be one of those species that they like. So whales are a predator of the great white shark.
Great question. All right, we'll go back to Mrs. Wineski's, and we'll do 3 to finish up with you, and then we'll finish with Miss Escobels with 3.
How can we prevent harm to sharks?
Question.
Good question. How can we prevent harm to sharks?
Well, a big thing is respecting. We love sharks. All of us love sharks. We've spent much of our adult life working with these animals. A big part of it is respecting that this shark is small, but if we don't handle it correctly, it can turn around. It's very flexible. They can actually bite their own tail. Handling and being respectful, that's the first thing. Safely handling them when we are, respecting that they're wild animals. And then is it continue like harm from us or?
I think so.
Okay. And then to continue on, like harm, like human harm, keeping trash out of the ocean. So that's a big thing. You guys have probably talked about that. That's just a good thing for the planet. There's way too much plastic. There's way too much trash. And that ends up in the oceans, and it affects all animals at different levels, whether it's the shark is eating something that's already ingested plastic or it gets caught up. Also making choices about the seafood we eat, the products. Sharks are used for fin soup, meat, pills, lotion, makeup. All the body parts are used. So being, smart about the choices you make and the things you purchase, and trying to avoid shark products, and also making choices of sustainable seafood to help keep the balance within the ocean if you eat. So those are really simple things. Spreading the word. Sharks are not man-eating monsters. Okay, this is not Jaws. They're absolutely important, critically important animals for the health of our oceans. So no matter where you live, that's an important thing, is healthy oceans. So kind of being active in your involvement and awareness and speaking about sharks and spreading the word for them and how important they are, and sharing with your friends and family that they're not man-eating monsters. And actually the scary thing is that 100 million sharks are killed every single year. 100 million. Right? That is a giant number, and it means that they're disappearing at a rate that's twice as fast as they can recover from. Right? So their populations can't recover from that. The simple things like joining us here today and learning a bit more is something that you're actually doing to help these animals. Great question.
Are sharks warm or cold-blooded?
Good question. So sharks are actually more like cold-blooded. They're kind of like reptiles. You know, if you ever go to you know, the pond or a river and you see a turtle sitting out of the water in the sun on a very bright day and he's warming himself up, sharks tend to do that. They don't sit outside the water. So what they'll do is hang out kind of at the top of the surface just to catch up as much heat as they can to kind of help warm themselves. But the unique thing is not all sharks are that way. So you have other deep water sharks that obviously are hundreds of meters underwater. The sun doesn't go that far, so they don't need it. So it's really a very, very unique that they'll, you know, some sharks will spend a lot of their time at the top of the water. They'll maybe dive down to find food and then come back up to again help warm themselves. Question.
You also have a few sharks too, like makos, great whites, that they can kind of keep their swimming muscles. So imagine if today you wanted to do a sprint, you were going to do a 100-yard dash, right? You wouldn't just go do it. You'd probably want to jog around, maybe stretch, get a little bit warmed up and ready to go, get those muscles. So these sharks, like makos and great whites, tuna can do it as well. They can actually keep certain muscles warmer, kind of like pumped up and ready to go. This is part of the reason that mako sharks are the fastest sharks in the world. So they have the ability to actually keep certain parts of muscular structure in the body a bit warmer than the water around them. So it's similar to being warm-blooded, but it's not exactly like Anthony said. It doesn't actually fit directly into kind of the distinct categories, and not every species of shark can do that, but some of them have that amazing ability to kind of keep those core swimming muscles a little bit warmer.
What are shark skin made of?
Say that again. Can you be a little bit louder?
What are shark skin made of?
Shark skin made of.
Fins? What are their fins made of?
Skin.
So the shark fins, it's cartilage. Their entire skeleton is made of cartilage. Same stuff like if you guys Ben mentioned earlier, bend the top of your ear. It's very flexible. So if you actually were to peel the skin back, you would see the inside, the cartilage that creates that. And the cartilage, again, is very flexible. It's also lighter than bone. So it's an advantage for them to keep them as part of their buoyancy system. But the fin inside is made of cartilage. And if you look on this little shark, if you compare this to another shark, the pectoral fins are really flexible, all right? So you can see these. This is really flexible. I know he's like, hey, guys. So they're actually really flexible if you look in the fin, all right? All of these are really flexible. Oops, let me see if I can lift it up, okay? So they're very, very flexible, and that helps with movement, and it's because of the cartilage. Great question. All right, and we'll finish up with 3 last ones from Miss Esquivel's class.
Do sharks take care of their babies?
Good question. So no, sharks don't take care of their babies. And what we do here at the lab, we actually know that very, very well, because some of the first studies we did here at the lab actually looked at juvenile sharks, and so the baby sharks. And what we saw and know is that the moms would come here to Bimini to have their young, they'd pup to have their babies, they'd go into some really shallow areas at high tide, so there was enough water for them to get in there, but they would just drop their babies off and leave. One, because they didn't want to get stuck in those really shallow areas, but their babies are going to be just fine because they're a lot smaller. But 2, they also don't want to eat their own young. Okay, so what we've seen is that, you know, other sharks will eat sharks, and it's usually the bigger sharks that'll eat the baby sharks. So the mom doesn't necessarily know who her babies are, and she has to eat. So to keep from doing that, she just leaves her babies right by our mangroves, gives them the protection, and she leaves. Good question. You have another one?
Are sharks mammals like us?
Are sharks what? Can you speak up?
Are sharks mammals like us?
Oh, are they mammals like us? They are actually not. Even though some of them give birth to live young, we talked about like those little lemon sharks, they have the little belly button scar. They're actually not. They're a type of fish. They're quite a bit different than the fish you might be familiar with, just from bones to cartilage versus scales and dermal denticles. Fish have a swim bladder. It's kind of like an internal balloon to help them float. Sharks don't have that. So even though some of them have that characteristic like mammals of giving birth to live young, they are not mammals. Great question. And we'll finish up with one last question.
One last question.
Do sharks eat other adult sharks that are the same type?
Do sharks eat other sharks of the same species?
Yeah, sharks are not, if they want to eat other smaller sharks that they come across, they don't specifically target their own species. It will be a variety. Lots of species of sharks are opportunistic feeders, so they will, if they have access to that particular prey item at the time, they will try and eat it. So, yeah, they're not restricted to eating other individuals from the same species. They will have other species, but again, sharks aren't their primary source of food. They can eat them and they will, but not all species do eat other species of sharks. So,
yeah, and I think regarding all the questions you guys have asked, it's really important to remember there's over 500 different species of sharks. So the way that they give birth, the habitats they use, the sizes they reach, from a whale shark, which is longer than a school bus, to a dwarf lantern shark, which is the size of my hand. They're incredibly diverse. They have incredibly diverse adaptations, abilities to live thousands of feet deep or in shallow waters. So all the different things, if you consider all it's incredibly different across that spectrum, which is why they're really, really remarkable creatures as well. And if you guys want to check out more, make sure to check out the lab's website, and it's www.biminisharklab.com. You can keep up with projects they have going on. You can check them out on social media to get updates on what they're doing. Different projects. There's a lot of exciting stuff. Like I said, they're flying drones to watch sharks, which I think is really, really cool. So you can check that out. We also have our Sharks4Kids website, www.sharks4kids.com, with lots of additional activities and extra resources if you want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the world of these incredible creatures. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Everyone watching and for our classrooms that joined us live to ask such great questions. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll let the sharks say goodbye. And we'll say goodbye to everybody. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Bye, guys.